Hi, I'm Mark.
And I'm Terry.
And we're Escaping the Empty Nest. Welcome back. On our trip to Boston, we knew there was one place that we had to see while we were in that part of the country, and that was the Star Trek Original Set Tour in Ticonderoga, New York. It's true that Ticonderoga really isn't that close to Boston, but compared to where we live in Texas, it's practically next door. So we rented a car to make the trek up there.
We started in the lobby with some authentic props, costumes, and memorabilia from the show. It was a nice collection, but we both knew what we were really here to see wasn't in the lobby.
Because of licensing rights with CBS, they asked that video not be taken during the tour. So I set my camera to take still images automatically, which is why this video is so choppy.
Now these aren't the original sets. Those weren't saved in the late 60s after the show was canceled because there wasn't a clue that Star Trek would become such a phenomenon. They are painstakingly detailed recreated sets built over 15 years using the original blueprints and techniques. You won't find a more accurate replica anywhere in the world, and for that it was worth the trip.
After the main hallway, we were taken into the transporter room that not only had the console from the TV series, but they had replicated the console from the pilot episode. We were allowed to get on the transporter pads for photos, and you didn't have to tell me twice. I knew right away that I had a date with Photoshop and Adobe Premiere when we got home. Next was sick bay, which included two different rooms. One room was the exam room, complete with tilting bed, and the other one was the recovery room.
The fabric on the beds was an exact reproduction of the original, but the displays above the beds were an LED display instead of the hand-operated slider like they used on the show. The next room was a room that they dressed differently depending on the need for the episode. It was a lounge, a conference room, even a chapel in one episode. On the conference table were several items that a Trekkie would be familiar with, including Spock's Vulcan loot and the 3D chessboard.
I pride myself on Trek trivia, but one thing I did not know was that one of the flags on the set was a very slightly modified Cuban flag. This was meant as a tribute to Desi Arnaz Jr. of the show's production company Desilu Studios, but because of ongoing political tensions with Cuba, the flag was never shown clearly in the show. They also had a futuristic deck of cards that were used as a prop on the show. I laugh because I remember having a set of cards like this back in the 70s.
The next room was the little-shown Dr. McCoy's office, with a replica tricorder and the adjacent science lab. The level of detail in these rooms that were almost never used in the show really impressed us, including this window treatment between the rooms. It was just cross-section PVC pipe, painstakingly glued together to form the grill. The science lab also had the decompression chamber as seen in the famous episode Space Seed, as well as other easy-to-recognize props.
The captain's quarters were as perfect reproduction as you could imagine. My mind was boggled at thinking how much effort it took to either track down the items it took to put together this room, or have the items reproduced. One concession they included in this room was the Tantalus field control that only appeared in the episode Mirror Mirror, but that's such an iconic episode, I'm glad they included it. As nice as the previous rooms were, we knew we had two of the most impressive sets ahead of us.
Engineering was amazing to be in. It was smaller than it seemed on the show, and camera tricks like forced perspective were used to make the long warp tunnel seem longer than what it really was. This was a full-size model with details reaching both levels. Right next to engineering was a turbo lift, and the guide had us grab the handles and say one thing.
Bridge. The doors opened and we were in heaven. It was perfect, beyond perfect. We walked around and listened to the guide tell stories, but I can't even remember what he said. I was just in awe of being in a room that was burned into my memory from countless hours of watching the show over the last 50 years.
It was time to sit in the famous captain's chair. It's the only time during the whole tour we were allowed to sit in any of the chairs, which is understandable, but we got some amazing keepsake photos out of it.
Twice in 2022, this tour is going to be led by William Shatner himself. The full weekend with Captain Kirk is $1,500. but that really didn't sound too high a price to me. If it was more local to us, I might splurge and do it for my birthday and Christmas and Father's Day and any other occasion I could think of.
When we got to the very end of the tour, it was really hard for me to keep from crying. My dad, who was a huge Star Trek fan, would have loved this, but he passed away from pancreatic cancer a couple of years before this was open to the public. I really wished I could have experienced this with him as well. It felt like this was me experiencing it for him.
We hope you've enjoyed the recap of our visit. Please leave a comment below and tell us what you think of the job they did in putting it together. If you liked it, send this video to a Trekkie friend of yours. They might not know it's here. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.